Hey there, it's Amy from thecrazycraftlady.com. I was at Dollar Tree the other day and I picked up a handful of these cute little Easter egg wreath forms. I'm going to show you what I made with them. First up, I want to show you how to fix these because sometimes the wire pops out, and someone had asked a question, I think on my bunny wreath roundup, how to fix these. So I just use a little bit of floral tape. So I'll like wrap it around one piece. So there's three sections. So I'll wrap it around one section, then the second section, the third section, and then back around the first section. Obviously, for Dollar Tree, these aren't like the greatest quality wreath forms, but make it work. So I started with my first one with these lilacs that Dollar Tree's had for quite a few years. I remember crafting with them 2 or 3 years ago for spring crafts, but they're a go-to staple of mine and one of my favorite flowers because sometimes the silk flowers at Dollar Tree can be hit or miss with quality, but I really like the lilacs. So I ended up using 6 bunches in white, 6 bunches in light purple, and 6 bunches in dark purple. And so what you do is you just cut the tops off a bunch, like one bunch of flowers, wrap it together in floral wire, and then wrap it to the wreath form. So when you attach it to the wreath form, you can wrap it around like either one piece of wire or 2 pieces of wire. But I wouldn't wrap it around like all 4 because I think it'd be sliding around too much. And so you just kind of have to weave it in and out. So it's a little bit time consuming, but not too bad. And then wrap it around, I don't know, 6 times, 8 times. And then when you get to the end, just twist it a handful of times and then cut off the tail ends. Super easy. And then you're just going to repeat the process with the other 17 bunches of flowers. So yeah, this is not the cheapest wreath because it does use quite a few bunches of flowers, but I think it's absolutely beautiful. And so what you do is you start at the top and you work your way down and you layer one bunch of flowers on top of the other. And then when you get to the end, you can kind of finagle them and slide them around to make sure that the whole wreath form is covered. But just, 3 bunches of each color on each side. So 3 white, 3 light, and 3 dark purple on each side. Super straightforward. And then when I get to the bottom, my trusty black and white check ribbon. This is like the jumbo roll that I got on clearance after Christmas. I always stock up on the Christmas black and white check ribbon. And then I'm not a professional bow maker, you guys, I'm sorry. So what I do is I just loop it back and forth. So the point was to make 5 figure 8s. So I did 3 large figure 8s, and then I was like, oh, I think those are a little bit too big. So then I kind of reworked it a little bit and I made them smaller. It's like I bunched it together and I was like, oh, I think that's a little too big. So I kind of reworked it and I made it just a little bit smaller. So I did 3 large figure 8s, and then directly on top of that, I added 2 smaller figure 8s. The whole point is just so that they're not all the same size. It gives your bow just like a little bit more dimension. So once I had all 5 figure 8s looped on top of each other, then it was time to assemble the bow in the center. So I just pinched it all together in the middle, and you don't care what it looks like when you first pinch it, and then twist it with a pipe cleaner, a chenille stem. I don't know, I call them pipe cleaners. And then twist that onto the wreath form. So just give it a couple twists in the back, and then trim off the ends of the pipe cleaner. And then you can kind of fluff out your bow. So take each of the loops individually and kind of fluff them out until you get the desired effect that you want. And if you don't twist that pipe cleaner too tight, you can kind of tug and pull on the loops. If one looks too small or one looks too big, you can kind of play around with it. And then just grab another piece of ribbon and wrap it all the way around the whole wreath form. Like all 4 layers of the wreath form, tie it in the back and knot it. And then you can kind of fluff and finagle the flowers to make sure everything looks even and the bow is as even as you want it to be. So just kind of play around with it until you get everything looking the way you want it. And then final thing is to trim the ends of the ribbon. So I just, you know, you fold it in half and you cut it at that 45-degree angle so that you get that nice, clean looking tail end on the bow. But that's it. That's my first little wreath, a little lilac Easter egg wreath. Next up, I went with paper doilies. So what you're gonna do is fold each paper doily in half. They're about 6 inches in diameter, but don't fold it exactly in half. You want it to be like, you want the middle seam to be a little bit offset. It just creates a little more dimension. Then flip it over and fold it into thirds, kind of like into a cone. Then poke that pointy end through one section of the wreath form and hot glue that tail end over. So fold it in half, fold it in thirds. I found it easier to add the hot glue first and then poke it through. So on the 2 outermost rungs, I found it best to really overlap the paper doilies so that when you look at the wreath, you can't see any exposed wire. So they're all overlapped, like about half. You know, one doily overlaps the other one by about a half. On the 2 middle rungs, you can get away with spacing them out a little bit more, especially because it's kind of difficult to stick your fingers between the wire rungs to get everything to stick. But it's really the most important to have them overlapping on the outer rung and the very inner rung. But just rinse and repeat and keep doing that over and over and over again until you have the whole wreath covered. And then I found this cute little hanging sign at Dollar Tree. It says hop. So I just cut the hanger off and I hot glued it right onto the wreath. So I just put hot glue kind of on the far ends of the sign and then pressed it in place. And those doilies are like dense enough that the sign stuck pretty well. And then you could just leave it as is, but I decided to add a bow. So I just cut 3 pieces of like a thicker teal ribbon from Dollar Tree. And then I cut 2 pieces of this funky white chenille type ribbon. I think I got it at Michael's. So you pinch them all together, same as the last bow, and then you secure it all together in the center with a pipe cleaner, give it a twist. Cut the ends of the pipe cleaner, and then I wanted to cover the pipe cleaner, so I used some more Dollar Tree checkered ribbon, and I wrapped it around twice, and then I knotted it in the back, and that way you just wouldn't be able to see the pipe cleaner. And it added just like a little bit of color to the center of my bow, and then I hot glued that in place right over the flower that was on the neck of the bunny. You could leave the sign as is, but I just thought it'd be cute to add a bow. But that's it. All right, wreath number 3. I used this really wide burlap ribbon that I have. You could just use pieces of burlap, like strips of burlap or whatever. I just had this in my craft stash and I've had it for years, so I just wanted to use it up. So I just wrapped that all the way around the wreath form, and I used a fair amount because I wanted little intervals, like where the seams between the ribbon, I wanted them fairly close together, and you'll see why, because I'm using them to stick my little greenery in. And I am obsessed with these silicone finger protectors. They've been a lifesaver when I remember to use them. It's like, how do I forget to use them and then I still burn myself? Hot glue problems, right? So once that's covered in the burlap, then I got these. Okay, so these are not from Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree does sell faux boxwood, but my Dollar Tree store was out. So I went to Michael's and I found like 40% off spring mini boxwood. And I really love these because they're like green and white, and I thought they were really cute. So just stick a little bit of hot glue on the end of each little piece of greenery, and then stick the end of the greenery into the little pocket that's formed between the layers of the burlap ribbon. So super duper easy, and I bought 3 sprigs of this because it was on sale, and I ended up using like 1.5, I think. So I'll keep the rest in my craft stash for other projects because I'm always using boxwood. But just keep repeating that process until the entire wreath form is covered with greenery. And then it's time to grab the iconic Dollar Tree carrots. They come in a couple different sizes. Last spring, I ordered a case of them on the website, so I just have a bunch in my craft stash. I used the smaller of the carrots. I think they come in a 6-pack, and I think the bigger ones come in a 4-pack, but don't quote me on that. But then I just kind of like haphazardly staggered carrots all around the wreath, and I just put a little dab of hot glue on the back of each carrot and then pressed them into the greenery, and they stayed put pretty well. And then for a finishing touch, I found this little hippity-hoppity bunny sign at Dollar Tree, and I disassembled it because I just wanted the bunny. It had like a faux wood look. And then I kind of centered it, figured out where I wanted it to be, and then put a couple dabs of hot glue on either end of the bunny. And I found it best to get like the bunny to stick with hot glue to the carrots and not to the greenery, if that makes sense. But that's it, a cute little bunny carrot wreath for Easter. And then my final wreath started the same way, wrapping it with burlap. So I'm gonna speed this up so I don't bore you all to death. Wrap that with burlap ribbon. And then it was time to add Spanish moss. So crafting pro tip, do not buy Spanish moss at the craft store because it is a ripoff. Buy it at Dollar Tree. So like this one packet was like $1.25. I was looking at Michael's. I can't remember what the moss was, but they were selling like a bag of straw. You guys, it was a bag of straw for like $5.99. It was insanity. But I digress. Anyway, so then just hot glue, like kind of pull apart that Spanish moss so you have little sections of it, and then generously hot glue it to the ribbon. So yes, this is extremely messy, but I really do love the look of the Spanish moss on this wreath, especially with the Easter eggs that I'm gonna add. So just cover that whole wreath form. And then I grabbed some speckled eggs from Michael's. Okay, so yes, Dollar Tree does sell speckled eggs. I just didn't love the look of them. I have also painted plastic eggs using chalk paint, which is a super awesome option as well. But these were at Michael's 40% off, so that's what I went with because I really, really liked the pastel muted tones of these eggs. And so you need a fair amount of hot glue. So sometimes like I'd put a big dab of hot glue on the back of the egg and it still didn't stick very well, so I'd stick a little bit more hot glue on there as well. But use as many eggs or as few eggs as you like, just kind of stagger them around the wreath form and kind of alternate the colors to the best of your ability. I think for this I used like 1.5 packets of eggs. One wasn't quite enough. And then I found some of these little mini flowers. I could use Dollar Tree flowers, but by this time I had already gone to Dollar Tree, and then I realized, oh, I wanted something else for this wreath, and I was at Michael's, and I didn't want to go back to Dollar Tree, so I just got these. They were 40% off in the spring floral section anyway. And I used about half of each sprig, so there was like a white one, or a pink one and a white one, and I used about half of each, but I just cut off little snippets of these little tiny flowers. And then I hot glued the ends and stuck them into the Spanish moss underneath the eggs. And it's really about personal preference, like how many flowers you want to add. So just keep adding flowers until you get your wreath to look the way you want it to. But here's my finished 4th and final Easter wreath. I do hope you enjoyed all 4 of these tutorials. If you have a favorite, I'd love to hear about it in the comments section below. Until next time, happy making!